Hello, my name is Owen Biddle.
I'm Justin King.
I'm Oliver Russell.
This is our Physics 213 project on regenerative braking. Let's get into it.
What is regenerative braking? Regenerative braking, also known as regenerative braking systems, is a system that captures the kinetic energy of a vehicle, train, or other automobile and captures it while the vehicle slows down, converting it into electricity that is typically stored within a battery. Regenerative braking was invented by Frank J. Sprague, who founded the Sprague Electric and Motor Company in 1886, in which regenerative braking was used by more heavy vehicles, such as carriages, trains, and buses, and other forms of public transportation. It was not until the invention of the EV1 by General Motors, on which regenerative braking as we know it was commercialized for personal automobile use. With the invention of the Prius, regenerative braking entered more into the public eye, as the Prius was the first hybrid vehicle to use regenerative braking on a large scale. The invention of regenerative braking was largely based around the invention of the non-sparking fixed-brushed motor, also created by Frank J. Sprague. As discussed earlier, regenerative braking is a system that captures the kinetic energy of a vehicle. This is typically done in modern vehicles via the electric motor acting as a generator, as when it is spun the opposite direction, electricity can be generated. Other forms of regenerative braking through the years have also consisted of turning the kinetic energy into energy stored on a flywheel, energy stored in a supercapacitor, or as again, stored in a battery. Regenerative braking and the way that it works can be described by using many of the concepts that we have learned throughout this class, including electricity, magnetism, energy, work, and power. We can use these concepts and our understanding of each of them to describe how regenerative braking works and how we can describe it. Regenerative braking can mainly be understood by two main physics foundational concepts, those being the conservation of energy, which means the total amount of energy in will be equal to the total amount of energy out, and the second concept being the idea that when a magnetic flux is induced, it will cause a current to flow in a specific direction, which we can solve for using the right-hand rule. Whenever a vehicle wants to use its regenerative braking systems, what will happen is it will cut power to its motors, and instead of using the motors as a way to supply kinetic energy, it will use them as generators, which are able to capture this kinetic energy. This occurs as despite the car not supplying power to the motors to spin them, the motors will continue to spin as the kinetic energy of the car that it already had will still make the car continue forward, thus spinning the wheels and thus spinning the motor. As the motors are still spinning, they are going to be inducing a magnetic flux onto the car. As a piece of the car, typically part that is on the car side and not on the wheel side, will be made out of a magnetic material. And since the car is not able to spin along with the wheels as the car simply has too much mass compared to the force that the flux would be creating, the flux is dissipated by a electrical current being generated in the wires of the car. This electrical current can be captured by the car as electricity and stored back into its battery or capacitors. The amount of energy captured by the regenerative braking process is often going to be referred to in the form of power, which is going to be the change in energy divided by the change in time. For our case, we can think of the change in energy as the braking efficiency times the mass of the car times the velocity of the car when it begins braking squared. The braking efficiency is going to be a common metric used for regenerative braking as it shows the total amount of work that is captured by the system divided by the total amount of work that was put into the system. The braking efficiency can range between 0 and 1, with a efficiency of 0 meaning that no power was captured or put back into the system. This is what we see in internal combustion engine cars, and a 1 meaning we have an ideal system in which all energy put in is recovered by the car. This unfortunately is not possible in the real world as we have outside forces such as friction that are going to take energy out of the system. However, a greater braking efficiency means more power is captured by the regenerative braking system and can be used again by the car.
And now, a real-world example brought to you by Grant. We're here at Grant Street where we're going to be showcasing how an electric vehicle actually restores power to the battery by going down this hill we have here behind us. We're going to be driving down and applying the brakes as we go down the hill and watching as it restores power from the brakes to the battery. This is the car that we're going to be using for the tests. There's sort of two ways that we can use regenerative braking in this vehicle. We can either just press on the brake as normal, or there's a paddle on the back of the steering wheel here that I can press down as I'm going downhill, and it will use exclusively regenerative braking in the vehicle. It's only set to one specific strength, so if I want to vary my braking power, I use the pedal, but if I want to use one specific strength of regenerative braking, I can use this if I want to maximize my energy efficiency. I'm going to slowly put my foot on the brake. We're going to see that power start to come back. This is all just my foot on the brake.
So what are the goals of regenerative braking? The main goal of regenerative braking and why it has been implemented in so many hybrid and electric vehicles is it allows the vehicle to extend its range by recapturing that kinetic energy that it had spent and to reduce wear and tear on the vehicle and its braking components. Regenerative braking benefits the user of the vehicle as it allows for their range to be extended, allowing the vehicle to travel a further distance on a single charge, as well as reducing the amount of times that the vehicle has to be charged, as some of the energy that was used is able to be recaptured and used by the vehicle. The main people who profit from regenerative braking include the user, as it saves them money on charging the vehicle, as well as electric and hybrid vehicle manufacturers, as due to the cost savings of these vehicles with regenerative braking, more consumers will choose electric or hybrid vehicles over internal combustion engine vehicles. The main people who are hurt by regenerative braking are the people who profit off of the charging of these vehicles. Similar to gas stations, these companies profit off of vehicles needing to come in and charge more frequently. Since regenerative braking cuts down on the frequency that a user will need to come in and charge their vehicle, this can potentially harm their profits. Now that we've understood how regenerative braking works, we can move into its implications on society. We will do this by comparing the benefits and detriments of this technology. We will start with the benefits. The largest benefit of regenerative braking is that it allows the car to save on fuel, as when a car is decelerating, it's able to recover some of that kinetic energy and put it back into the car's battery, allowing it to use it again in future accelerations or to power other facets of the car. On average, this allows for 2% of the total energy that would be lost in an internal combustion engine to be recovered. While a 2% savings in energy doesn't seem like a big deal, over the course of driving hundreds of miles, it has a large amount of savings for the consumer. The next major benefit of regenerative braking is it saves wear and tear on mechanical brakes. Since mechanical brakes are only engaged once the vehicle has mostly been slowed down, they're used significantly less and only at slower speeds, drastically increasing their lifespan. The next major benefit of regenerative braking is that it allows the range of the electric or hybrid vehicle to be increased. As the car reclaims some of the energy and stores it back into the car's battery or capacitors, it's able to use that same energy to accelerate the car later down the road. All three of these benefits together combine to form a main benefit in that the car will become more environmentally friendly, as electric and hybrid vehicles will be able to reuse some of the reclaimed energy, as well as has less wear and tear on their physical components, making it that these components don't have to be replaced as often, and that energy does not have to be created and charged into the vehicle more often, saving on the car's total carbon emission. Moving on to the downfalls and detriments of regenerative braking, there are two main that we will look at. The first of these detriments with regenerative braking is a potential for a negative impact on the car's battery. In a car without regenerative braking, current will always be exiting the battery or entering the battery during charging at a very specific current. This is not always true during regenerative braking, as energy could be entering the battery at very unspecific times and at very different or much higher currents. If a manufacturer does not account for this higher current, something called overcurrent could occur, which can be solved with series capacitors, and in most electric vehicle and hybrid vehicle cases, this is accounted for. The second main detriment of regenerative braking is that in slower speed situations, regenerative braking will be less efficient than traditional friction brakes, which means it may not be able to bring a car to a complete stop fast enough in an emergency situation. With regenerative braking, it does train a driver to change their braking habits, and if the driver is not able to rectify this in this emergency situation, it could lead to an accident. Looking at all the benefits and detriments of regenerative braking, we can say that overall it has a very positive social element, and the continued innovation in regenerative braking technology will all around help society advance. Now that we have looked at both the physical concepts of regenerative braking and the implications of this technology on society as a whole, we want to pose a question to the viewer of what sort of regenerative braking technologies do you want to see in the future, and how do you feel regenerative braking has impacted society in other ways that we have not covered? The reusing of electricity from regenerative braking inside vehicles has caused a major shift in the way that consumers look at buying a car and which car they're wanting to purchase. In some cases, it prevents people from buying internal combustion engine vehicles altogether and switching to fully electric vehicles, or instead just simply going for a hybrid option that uses regenerative braking to cut down on some of the emissions of the vehicle. Overall, regenerative braking and other forms of regenerative technologies have made a major impact in not only the social but cultural aspect of purchasing a vehicle and other forms of appliances and equipment. We look to the future to see how regenerative braking technologies continue to advance and change the way that people live their lives.